That Friday evening felt different. The kind of different that settles over you like a warm blanket after a long, hard day. The house was unusually still, a peaceful quiet that's rare when you're a single mom, even to a 19-year-old. It was the kind of stillness that let me finally exhale, a rare sense of calm washing over me. The week had been a beast, a relentless cycle of work and errands, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed and sleep for a solid 10 hours. As I lay down, the thought crossed my mind that nothing could possibly break the silence of that night. It had been just Ethan and me for the past 8 years, ever since my divorce. Mark, my ex-husband, and I didn't have some dramatic, tear-filled split. We simply grew apart, our paths diverging in ways we hadn't foreseen. Raising Ethan on my own had been the most challenging and rewarding experience of my life. That kid, he's my everything. Smart as a whip, with a dry sense of humor that always catches me off guard, and a genuinely kind heart. But let me tell you, playing both mom and dad isn't for the faint of heart. That night, though, exhaustion had truly set in. I barely had the energy to pull on my pajamas before collapsing into bed. The house was quiet. Ethan had been in his room for hours, lost in the world of video games after finishing his homework. Finally, some time alone in my own little sanctuary. The moonlight, a soft, silvery glow, seeped through the thin, curved curtains, painting gentle shadows on the walls. I snuggled under the warmth of my comforter, letting my mind finally quiet down. Life had been calm lately, a welcome change after a particularly rough year. Ethan and I had been through a lot since his father left, but we had built a solid life together, a comfortable rhythm to our days. Even though Ethan was practically a grown man, almost 20, we were still incredibly close. He had always been a caring and considerate kid, maybe even a little too much so. Sometimes I worried that he carried too much responsibility on his young shoulders. A small smile touched my lips as I thought of him. He really is a good kid, and I felt so fortunate to have him in my life. But tonight, even those warm thoughts couldn't keep the heavy blanket of sleepiness at bay. My eyelids felt like lead, my limbs heavy and relaxed. Just as I was drifting into that delicious state between wakefulness and sleep, I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. I stirred slightly, thinking it was part of a dream, that hazy realm where anything is possible. But then the knock came again, a little more insistent this time, and I was fully awake. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was soft, muffled through the door, but clear enough to pull me from my slumber. I blinked, trying to focus on the door. I could make out his outline in the faint light spilling from the hallway. I sat up in bed, the sleepiness still clinging to me like a stubborn fog. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice still thick with sleep. He paused for a moment before slowly pushing the door open and quietly stepping inside, closing it behind him. He stood by my bed, looking down, his posture uncertain. I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. A wave of worry washed over me. Since the divorce, Ethan had occasionally had trouble sleeping, but he rarely talked about it. I knew his father's departure had affected him more deeply than he ever let on, and in the dim light, I could see a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Come here," I said softly, patting the empty space beside me on the bed. "You can stay with me tonight if you want." He hesitated for a fleeting moment, his gaze flickering between me and the bed, before finally lying down beside me. He turned onto his side, facing me. In the soft moonlight filtering through the curtains, I could see how tired he looked, a weariness that went beyond just a lack of sleep. He seemed unusually vulnerable, like the little boy who used to come running to my room after a bad dream. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked gently, my voice low and soothing. Ethan shook his head. his dark hair falling across his forehead. "No," he murmured, his eyes fixed on some unseen point beyond me. I just wanted to be close to you." My heart warmed at his words. It had been a while since Ethan had sought this kind of closeness, the kind he used to crave when he was younger. I gently brushed his hair away from his forehead, a small instinctive gesture of comfort. I smiled softly at him. "That's okay," I whispered, resting my hand on his shoulder. "You can stay as long as you need." He offered a small, tired smile in return, but I could still sense a lingering unease, something bothering him beneath the surface. Instead of pressing him to talk, I lay back down, pulling the blanket up over both of us, and let the quiet of the night envelop us once more. We lay there for a while, enjoying the stillness, the only sound the soft rhythm of our breathing. I thought Ethan had finally drifted off to sleep when he spoke again, his voice so soft I almost didn't catch the words. "Mom, do you ever miss him?" His question caught me completely by surprise. I knew instantly he was talking about his father. It was a question I had avoided for years, one I honestly didn't know how to fully answer, even to myself. "I do, sometimes," I admitted quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "But things weren't good between us, Daniel, you know that." He nodded slowly, his gaze still distant, but I could tell he wanted to hear more, to understand something that had remained unspoken for so long. "Do you ever think things could have been different?" he asked, his voice laced with a wistful longing that tugged at my heart. I sighed softly, reflecting on the countless nights I had replayed the past in my head, wondering the same thing. "Maybe," I said quietly, my voice tinged with a hint of regret. "But we can't change what happened, Ethan. We have to focus on moving forward, on building our own happiness." Ethan looked down again, his fingers now tracing patterns on the soft blanket. I wonder if I could have done something different. Like if I had been a better kid, maybe Dad wouldn't have left." His voice was barely audible, each word weighted with a self-blame that pierced me like a shard of glass. His words broke my heart. I sat up and turned to face him fully, my hand reaching out to gently cup his cheek. "Ethan, no, this wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong," I said firmly, looking directly into his eyes. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the shadows dancing on the wall. Sometimes it just feels like if I had been better, maybe Dad would have stayed." His voice was barely a whisper, filled with such raw vulnerability that tears welled up in my eyes. I pulled him closer, wrapping my arms around him in a tight embrace. He resisted for a fleeting moment, a stiffness in his young body, but then he hugged me back, burying his face in my shoulder. I could feel the dampness of his tears against my skin. "Daniel, listen to me," I said, my voice shaking slightly with emotion. "Your dad made his own choices. It had absolutely nothing to do with you. It was his decision, and it was never, ever your responsibility. You have always been more than enough for me, Ethan. Always." I whispered the words, pouring all my love and reassurance into them. "You're everything to me." He nodded against my shoulder, his grip tightening around me, but I could still feel the tension lingering in his body, the weight of years of silent pain and guilt. We held each other closely, the silence between us offering a strange kind of comfort, a shared understanding of a wound that time hadn't fully healed. Gradually, I felt his body relax against mine, the tension in his shoulders easing. His breathing deepened, and I knew he had finally drifted back to sleep, his face nestled against my neck. But as he rested peacefully beside me, My mind was wide awake, a whirlwind of thoughts and memories swirling in the darkness. We had both endured so much, navigated so many challenges together. And yet, in the quiet comfort of our shared embrace, something unexpected stirred within me. It was a feeling I couldn't quite describe, a warmth that spread through my chest, a connection that felt different, deeper, more intimate than the usual bond between a mother and her son. It wasn't just the relief of comforting my child, it was something more, a subtle undercurrent of emotion that I couldn't quite place. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the steady rhythm of his breathing, on the familiar weight of his body against mine. But the sensation remained, a persistent whisper in the quiet of the night. Morning arrived too quickly, as mornings often do when you've spent half the night awake. The soft light of dawn gently illuminated the room, painting the walls in hues of pale gold and rose. Ethan slept soundly beside me, his face peaceful and relaxed, the tension of the previous night seemingly forgotten. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with the familiar love and pride of a mother. But beneath that familiar affection, that unfamiliar feeling from the night before lingered, a quiet presence that I couldn't shake. Careful not to wake him, I slipped out of bed and went downstairs to make breakfast. The familiar routine of grinding the coffee beans and the sizzle of bacon in the pan brought a small measure of comfort, but my thoughts kept returning to our conversation from the night before. I knew Ethan had always been sensitive, but I hadn't realized how deeply he had internalized his father's absence. The weight of guilt he carried around like a hidden burden. It weighed heavily on my own heart, a burden I wished I could take away. But it wasn't just his words that lingered in my mind. It was the way he had looked at me, the vulnerability in his eyes, and the unspoken longing for something more than just comfort. And if I was honest with myself, I had felt it too, that unexpected warmth I had experienced when I held him, a comfort that went beyond just being a mother soothing her child. I pushed the thought aside, reminding myself that he was my son, my boy. But the feeling, that subtle shift in my own emotions, didn't entirely go away. Ethan eventually came downstairs, his hair still endearingly messy, a reminder of the boy he still was, but there was a new maturity in his eyes, a glimpse of the man he was slowly becoming. I greeted him with a smile, trying to mask the confusing emotions swirling within me. "Morning, sleepyhead," I said, placing a plate of pancakes in front of him. "Morning," he mumbled, still half asleep, as he sat down and started digging into his breakfast. We ate in comfortable silence, the soft morning light filling the kitchen with a warm glow. Occasionally I felt his gaze on me, a fleeting glance that held a hint of something I couldn't quite decipher. I chose not to bring up the previous night, sensing that he might not be ready to talk about it yet. He seemed more at ease, more like his usual self, and I didn't want to disrupt the fragile peace we had found. Finally, as he finished his last pancake, Ethan broke the silence. "Thanks for last night, Mom. I really needed that." His unexpected vulnerability caught me slightly off guard. "You never have to thank me, Ethan," I reassured him, my voice soft. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." He nodded, his eyes meeting mine for a brief moment, but his gaze lingered a little longer than usual, an unspoken question hanging in the air between us. I wasn't sure how to respond, unsure how to navigate this subtle shift in our dynamic. There was a new intensity in his eyes, a yearning for connection that felt different, that went beyond the usual mother-son bond. And a part of me, a part I hadn't fully acknowledged before, felt it too. The day unfolded with a quiet sort of tension hanging in the air between Ethan and me. He retreated to his room after breakfast, the familiar click of his keyboard and the low rumble of his video game providing a backdrop to my own quiet activities around the house. Yet, even with the physical distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us, a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the atmosphere. It was an intangible thing, an unspoken understanding of a deeper connection that had been forged in the vulnerability of the previous night. As the day turned into evening, my thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan, to his transformation from the boy I had raised, to the young man he was becoming, and to the unexpected closeness we had shared. The more I pondered it, the more I realized that my feelings for him had indeed evolved, subtly transcending the comfortable boundaries of maternal love. It wasn't a sudden, jarring realization, but a slow, gentle unfolding, like a flower tentatively reaching for the sun. That evening, after a simple dinner, we settled on the couch to watch a movie. The living room was dimly lit, the only real light source the flickering images on the screen, casting dancing shadows across the walls. We sat mostly in silence, a comfortable companionship that had always been a cornerstone of our relationship. But as the movie continued, I became acutely aware of his nearness, the way his arm rested on the armrest beside mine, the almost imperceptible brush of our sleeves with every small movement either of us made. My heart rate picked up a notch, and I found myself struggling to concentrate on the plot, the quiet tension between us, a more compelling narrative. Midway through the film, during a particularly poignant scene, Ethan shifted slightly on the couch, moving closer. His arm now rested firmly against mine, and this time neither of us pulled away. The warmth radiating from his skin against mine sent a subtle ripple of awareness through me, a sensation both unfamiliar and strangely comforting. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye, and in the dim light I could see his gaze was fixed on the screen, but I sensed a similar awareness in him. A few moments later, without thinking, I reached for his hand. My fingers brushed against his, and he immediately interlaced them with mine. His grip was gentle but firm, his thumb tracing slow, almost unconscious circles on the back of my hand. That simple touch, in the quiet darkness of the living room, sent a flutter through my chest, a sensation both familiar in its intimacy and thrillingly new in its context. We sat like that for a while, hands clasped in the dim light, a silent acknowledgement of the shifting dynamics of our relationship. It was a turning point, a moment of unspoken understanding that went beyond the usual roles we played. The movie continued to play out on the screen, but my attention was fully focused on the warmth of his hand in mine. I wasn't sure what the future held, what this new dimension to our relationship meant, but in that moment, none of that seemed to matter. All that existed was the quiet connection between us, the comfortable silence punctuated only by the rhythmic rise and fall of our chests as we breathed. Ethan was no longer just my son. He was something more, someone I cared for in a way that defied simple explanation, a feeling that resonated deep within my soul. The movie eventually ended, the credits rolling across the screen unnoticed. We remained on the couch, our hands still intertwined. I leaned my head gently on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my ear. It was a small gesture, yet it felt profoundly intimate, a quiet recognition of the bond that was subtly blossoming between us. "Mom?" Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible above the soft hum of the television. "Yeah," I replied softly, my own voice a little husky. "I'm really glad you're here," he said, his words simple yet profound, echoing the sentiment that filled my own heart. I squeezed his hand gently. "I'm glad you're here too, Ethan." This unexpected closeness, this newfound intimacy, was both exhilarating and a little frightening. It felt like we were standing on the edge of something significant, something that could change everything between us. Yet, beneath the apprehension, there was also an undeniable sense of rightness, a feeling that this was a path we were meant to explore. For the first time in what felt like a long time, I felt truly alive, a spark of something new igniting within me. There was no confusion in that moment, no guilt, just the pure, undeniable truth of a connection that had deepened and evolved in ways I never could have imagined. As I lay there in the darkness, wrapped in the quiet warmth of my son's presence beside me, a profound realization washed over me. The delicate balance of our relationship was indeed shifting, teetering on the edge of something new and uncharted. A tremor of apprehension coursed through me, a whisper of uncertainty about what this transformation might ultimately mean for us. But amidst the apprehension, there was also an undeniable sense of anticipation, a quiet recognition that this was just the beginning of a journey into the unknown, a journey we were embarking on together. Morning came softly, the gentle sunlight filtering through the curtains, rousing me from a sleep that felt both restful and strangely charged. Beside me, Ethan slept peacefully, his face calm and relaxed, the worries of the previous night seemingly forgotten. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with the familiar love of a mother, but beneath that, the unfamiliar feeling from the night before stirred again, a sensation I couldn't quite name, something that both intrigued and unsettled me. I slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to disturb him, and went downstairs to start breakfast. As I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease, my thoughts drifted back to our late-night conversation and the quiet intimacy of the evening before. I acknowledged the depth of Ethan's vulnerability and the undeniable shift in his demeanor, the way he sought comfort and connection that went beyond our usual bond. And if I was truly honest with myself, I had to admit that I felt it too, that unexpected warmth that spread through me when we held hands, a comfort that felt deeper than mere maternal instinct. Ethan eventually woke up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, his hair adorably tousled. He greeted me with a warm smile as he came into the kitchen, and we ate breakfast in a comfortable, unspoken understanding. He thanked me again for the previous night, his gaze lingering on mine for a moment, a silent question in his eyes that mirrored the unspoken emotions swirling within me. The day passed uneventfully. Ethan spent most of his time on his computer while I busied myself with household chores. Yet the atmosphere between us had subtly shifted. There was a quiet tension, an awareness of the deeper connection that had emerged. That evening, after dinner, we found ourselves back on the couch, another movie playing on the screen. The room was dimly lit, and as the movie progressed, the physical closeness between us intensified. It felt natural, unforced. Our arms rested against each other, and eventually our hands found their way together again, fingers intertwined in the soft light. It was a silent testament to the evolving dynamics of our relationship, a quiet acknowledgement of the feelings that were growing between us. As I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, a profound realization washed over me. Daniel was no longer just my son. He was someone I cared for deeply, in a way that defied the simple labels of family. The line between mother and son felt blurred, replaced by a connection that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Later that night, after the movie ended, and the house settled into a quiet stillness, Ethan lingered in the living room. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine with an intensity I hadn't seen before. "Mom," he began, his voice low and a little hesitant. I waited, my heart pounding softly in my chest, unsure of what he was going to say, but knowing deep down that we were on the precipice of something significant. He reached out, his hand gently cupping my cheek. His touch sent a shiver down my spine, a sensation both familiar and incredibly new. His eyes held a warmth that mirrored the feelings I had been trying to reconcile within myself. "Are we okay?" he asked softly, his thumb tracing a gentle line along my jawline. I looked into his eyes, seeing not just my son, but a young man with a depth of emotion that mirrored my own. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Fear, uncertainty, but also a profound sense of connection and a hesitant hope for something more. Taking a deep breath, I met his gaze, my own emotions reflected back at me in his warm, searching eyes. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. "Yeah, Ethan," I whispered, my voice thick with unspoken emotion. I think we're going to be okay." The future stretched before us, uncertain and uncharted, but in that moment, held in the gentle warmth of his touch, a sense of quiet anticipation settled over me. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, a journey into the unknown together.